That's real good MMA, everybody. That's what you want out of a great era, right? It was
That was
5 years
fantastic.
of madness, and I loved it, and I've been chasing that high ever since.
All right, welcome to another episode of Two Fight Fans. We talk about all things in combat sports. I'm One Fight Fan, Colin.
I am very sick, Stuart.
Jesus.
Yeah, sorry.
Wow.
Ah,
Today we are going to talk what I have like to call the best of times and the worst of times in various divisions. But
it's every
first,
time, baby.
I do want to talk about a future segment that I think we should
Okay.
partake in, especially over these next couple of weeks when there is like fuck all for happening in the worlds of the UFC and MMA and boxing in general. But
Yeah.
I have been getting a lot of random notifications for posts on Reddit's MMA Academy, and my goodness, they
MMA
are
Academy.
it is like people asking Reddit for advice on their training and or whether or not they should become professional fighters. And
Mm.
some of the gold there is fantastic. And we need to talk about it sometime.
Okay. We should. Now I do want to caveat with that with here at Two Fight Fans podcast, we do recognize the young male loneliness epidemic that is ravaging most of the developed world, and that what that often does is lead to antisocial behavior by a lot of young men, and that they really need just a single compliment. So we will try to be as gentle and complimentary of at least one aspect of whatever you bring up.
Okay. Like we said, we're being positive here. But
Yes.
I figured if the problem I have found with a lot of subreddits, either they give you like decent advice or absolute shit advice. So I think what we should do, I'm not just saying shit on these posts. I'm saying if there's an actual question there, we should give legitimate advice.
Yeah, I think that's a good call.
There. That's our positive spin on it.
There we go. That works. Or at least be like, hey man, it could like you might want to like hit leg day at the gym a little bit more, like kind of even you out a little bit. And that's a free tip from me to you, and that's not even a diss. Like we all skip leg day every now and then, it's worthwhile. All right,
let's
talk
do this.
about this. The best of times, worst of times. What we're gonna do is we're gonna talk about the best time, generation, or era in MMA divisions, the worst era, and then kind of rank where are we on that sliding scale between best to worst in the current era. Sometimes the current era will be the best era. Sometimes, more often than not, the current era will be the worst era. So I think because there are fewer eras and it's much faster to get through, let's start with the 3 women's divisions. Now, yes. I know. There are many Japanese organizations which have women's atomweight. We do have North American organizations that have atomweight. We also have featherweight as a story division with Chris Cyborg. She is still there. It is still the Chris Cyborg era at featherweight. So what we'll say is the current era is the only era. Long live the queen, Cyborg. But let's start at the what
about actually to go on featherweight because women's featherweight, because there is no women's featherweight anymore in the UFC, as we talked about before.
Yeah.
You think the current era with Chris Cyborg was better than when Amanda Nunes was dominating at featherweight?
Was dominating? What are you talking about?
I mean, okay, when she held the championship.
When she beat Felicia Spencer and Megan Anderson?
Didn't she take it from Chris Cyborg?
Yeah, in one fight. And then Chris Cyborg left the UFC and continued to defend that belt against other fighters continuously around the world. Many of whom were much better than Megan Anderson and Felicia Spencer.
Fair. So, okay.
Amanda Nunes did use... it was kind of the Holy Roman Empire versus the Pope thing. Who's really the most powerful Catholic in the world? I don't really know, but we all recognize the Pope today, and nobody recognizes anyone as the Holy Roman Empire emperor. So I'm gonna say it's the Chris Cyborg era, and that's the only era that's ever existed in featherweight.
All right.
All right, let's start at women's bantamweight. This
All right.
is for the longest time was the marquee division.
Hmm.
Colin, how many eras do you reckon there are in this division?
I would say 3.
Okay,
And
right
the
on.
reason, and a lot of these divisions that we're going to talk about today are kind of marked by one dominant champion and then a new one either taking over or usurping them, whatever there. So
Mhm.
I would say for women's bantamweight, it started with Ronda Rousey,
Yep.
really the first like major superstar for women's MMA and really MMA in general as a whole. Not the first superstar, but she was a major superstar,
It was an
for the UFC at the
elevation
time.
above, definitely an elevation above the Diaz brothers and Chuck
Yes.
Liddell and Randy Couture, who were the previous stars.
Yes.
Yep.
I think that's a fair assessment there. So you've got Ronda Rousey, then you've got Amanda Nunez,
Hmm.
and now you kind of have the current generation here.
Yep. So we've got the
3.
OG generation, dominated primarily by Rousey. We've got the what do you even want to call it? The Roman Empire generation of Amanda Nunes laying waste to this fucking division.
Yeah, sure.
And now we have the sort of Mad Max people fighting over the scraps that Amanda Nunes has left. So the old, the middle, the new. That's what we've got.
Yeah.
Colin, which was the best era for this division?
Okay, and I want to clarify what do you mean best? Most entertaining, most competitive? Because
Ooh, I don't know. It's a secret third thing. Like I can't. I don't know. It's because I was looking at this and I went, well, it's clearly the best is the Ronda Rousey one. It had the most storylines. It has the rivalry with Misha Tate, Katsunganu, Alexis Davis, Sarah McMahon. These were all very respected names at the time who all had varied skill sets. But then I look at them and I go like, but they're not as skilled as Valentina Shevchenko, as Holly Holm,
right,
as
right.
Janine Duran to me. But the Amanda Nunes era didn't feel as dynamic or as exciting or as there. Every time Ronda Rousey fought, you thought like this is a new kind of puzzle she needs to solve. I can't wait to see how she dominates this person. Whereas Amanda Nunes, it felt so much more of like, well, here's another person for Amanda Nunes to beat. You know what I
It-
mean?
yes, and I don't know if that was because when we look at Ronda Rousey, is that because it was so new, like we hadn't really seen aside from like women's MMA, aside from like Asian MMA organizations or like Strike Force, you didn't really see a lot of mainstream women's fights, you know? And with the UFC being the UFC and being touted as the greatest, having the greatest talent pool of fighters, it was like what are we seeing? What are we looking for, you know?
Yeah.
And for Ronda Rousey, everything was new. And you could even make the argument it was like, okay, like how is Ronda Rousey going to solve this puzzle? Oh, by using her judo and getting an armbar. Like
Mhm. Yeah.
that is what.
Sure.
So it became like, how is this person going to avoid falling into that trap? And it turns out you just need her to self implode and think that she was a striker against going against one of the best female strikers in the world at the time. So
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, it was all about, like, Ronda Rousey versus Liv Carmouche. That was a pretty dynamic fight, I remember, because Liz Carmouche got her back and, like, almost choked her out. Then it was the storied rival with Misha Tate. Sarah McMahon, then, a silver medalist in wrestling from the Olympics. And Ronda Rousey finished her with knees to the body without ever taking her to the ground. Like, that was pretty dynamic.
I forgot about that fight.
Yeah. Alexis Davis, not the best, but like definitely a woman's pioneer. Katsunganu had beaten Amanda Nunes, was storming through this division. laid a bit of an egg in their fight, but like that was an intriguing matchup. Now, the Betch Kohea one, which was one of Ronda Rousey's best selling pay per views, I love me Betch Kohea. Listen, I will always stand behind Betch Kohea. The fact that you could start training MMA 3 years ago and then fight Ronda Rousey, that's a real underdog story. That's a Rudy story. Rudy should have never played in the NFL. You kidding me? Rudy would have gotten sacked in 3 seconds in the NFL, and all of his bones would have exploded. And that's what happened to Betch Kohea, right? Like it's like it's a bummer. But within this Ronda Rousey era, which I guess we should just call the OG era rather than naming Ronda Rousey, is like her contemporaries were still Holly Holm and Misha Tate, and they won titles. And then Holly Holm took it from Ronda, and then Misha Tate took it from Holly. Like there was parity at the top where the title could pass back and forth, and that was very interesting and intriguing. Um, then we get to the Amanda Nunes one where like she smokes Ronda because of course she's the evolution. In the same way that Max smoked Jose Aldo, Alexander smoked Max, Ilya smoked both Max and Alexander Volkanovski. Like this is what Amanda was meant to do. And then it was
Yeah.
a pretty boring fight with Valentina, a pretty boring fight with Raquel Pennington. She did knock out Holly Holm, who was an older generation, and then beat Drained Amanda Me, who was kind of an older generation as well. So I don't know. My pick is the OG generation, just
Mhm.
because the parody and the intrigue and the storylines, even if the skill maybe was not quite as high, it hasn't jumped up that much farther.
Mhm.
And the contenders of those past generations are now the champions of today's generation. So uh, I think the OG generation is number one for bantamweight.
Yeah. Yeah. I think in terms of overall like entertainment, excitement, clout, and everything, it was the first one. And, you know, Ronda Rousey dominated her fights and divisions in a way that really carried women's MMA. I mean, for the longest time,
Absolutely.
people were really like against women's MMA. I mean, Dana White himself said he would never have women in the UFC because he thought it was too brutal of a sport for women, you know? But then you have Ronda Rousey coming out and like absolutely dominating everyone, you know, and doing it with technique and really highlighting some of her skills, you know. And I think if we didn't have an explosive women's champion that the whole organization could rally around, it really like the whole women's MMA in the UFC could have folded pretty quickly after that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I don't want to get super deep into the real reason behind why Ronda Rousey and Dana White really pushed for this division. Um, but anyone who doesn't know much about the history back around 2012, look up some things Brendan Schaub has said, look up some things that Dana White's wife has said, that some
Mhm.
investigations have been into between the relationship between Dana White and Ronda Rousey, yada, yada, yada. It doesn't
Yeah,
negate anything that she did, but her fighting prowess was not the only reason she
yeah,
was brought into the organization. And that's much more of an indictment on the institutions of power within MMA than it is to her.
yeah. We're just talking about fighting skill right now and fighting entertainment, I should say.
Yeah. So, OG, best part of bantamweight. Now, Colin,
Yeah,
we only have two to pick from. What's the worst one for bantamweight?
this one right now.
Why?
So right now we have parity, you know, and we have changes of champions, which could indicate the fact that it's very, very competitive, which we'll talk about in some other divisions, you know, like, and that's why that generation is like exciting because you have people constantly jockeying at the top, new challengers coming in, you know, and it makes the division exciting because it's constantly evolving. And you kind of have that now. Not really. You have that a little bit. The problem that I see this though is the actual overall skill ceiling, I feel like is less right now than it was when Amanda Nunez is going. Now, Amanda Nunez, when she fought, she may have fought against some less skilled people than there are today. I'm not denying that. But I do feel like, and I've made this prediction multiple times. I've said, I feel like if Amanda Nunes was to come in right now, she could win in this division. She could beat out the top contenders right now in bantamweight.
Yeah. I think that like all that really needs to be kind of noted is that Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena, the only two champions that have existed within this post Amanda Nunes era, both debuted in the UFC 1 year after Ronda Rousey debuted in the UFC. They did not win in their generation. They just had to wait for the champions of their generation to age out.
Yep.
They didn't take the title. They had to wait until other people decided, I don't even want the title anymore. That's not good. That's not good, man. I'm coughing up a storm over here. Sorry, I'm trying to move away from that thing. Woo! God damn. All right. So yeah, best the OG one. We are in the worst era for women's bantamweight. Like significantly. Like how far is the drop off for you?
It's pretty significant because at least for me, like when Amanda Nunes was fighting, I would watch her fights because I wanted to see her skill.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm like, I would not. I'm not tuning into a card if it's just one of these champions fighting. You know, like they cannot carry a card for me.
Yeah. Yeah, makes sense. All right, let's move on to the next one, and I want to move on in the order in which they were introduced to the UFC overall. So it is not women's flyweight. It is, in fact, women's strawweight. That was the second division introduced.
Yeah.
Colin, for strawweight, how many eras do you see this division as having?
All right. So I kind of have, you could argue 2 or 3. And I've listed out 3 right now.
Okay.
So you have the Carla Esparza / Joanna Jędrzejczyk, like initial era.
Yeah, let's just call it the Joanna champion.
Yeah. I only say Carla Esparza because her name pops up a couple times. But yeah, basically Joanna Jędrzejczyk being champion. You have the Zhang Weili, Rose, Carla Esparza kind of shuffle around for those few years, kind of during COVID, immediately out of COVID time, and then now this current one with Zhang Weili, which that's why I say you could make the argument that Zhang Weili 1 and 2 is the same generation.
Yeah, I would like. It is hard because you kind of want to like. I mean, there clearly is a demarcation line between the Joanna champion time, right, when it was Jessica Penne, Valerie Letourneau, Claudia Gadelha, Karolina Kowalkiewicz, only one of which is still fighting in the UFC. Joanna is retired, Claudia Gadelha is retired, Valerie Letourneau is retired, Jessica Penne is retired, or maybe she's come back. But like, Carla Esparza is also retired. So this is the older generation. And then it really has been hot potato since like 2017 between Rose, Jessica, Zhang, Rose, Carla, Zhang, without many title defenses against anyone who is not one of those names. I guess you could say that Zhang is she both was a title holder and challenger in this kind of middle era, and then in the new era, now that she is defending against kind of Tatiana Suarez, Yan Xiaonan, Amanda Lemos, she's entering into a new era overall, right? She's fighting the younger generation rather than her peers, which were
right.
Yeah. So I could see it as 3.
Okay.
What era do you think is the best?
Oh. Here's the thing. I liked Joanna. This is like kind of like we talked about before. I liked Joanna Jędrzejczyk. I watched her fight for her specifically, but I do think she was a step above all of her other peers in terms of competition. So it wasn't as competitive as maybe some other timelines are, but I did like watching her for her abilities. I would say the Rose, Zhang Weili, Rose division, like when Zhang Weili and Rose were competing against each other and their generation, their peers all together, not Zhang Weili currently against the new generation. Although that's I feel actually this one is much harder for me to pick,
Mhm.
but I would say that Rose, Zhang Weili, Rose shuffling of champions timeline. So from what 2018 to 2021, 2022.
Yeah, so like basically up until like very recently. Um,
Yes.
yeah, let's create some names for this. We've got the old dynasty of Yana and Jacek.
Yep.
We go through the Warring States period, where it goes Rose, Jessica, Zhang, Rose, Carla, Zhang,
Yeah. Yeah.
and then we have the new dynasty with Zhang.
Hmm.
And so you're saying the Warring States period is the most interesting.
Yes. Yes.
I agree with you. I think that's right.
Oh.
I
All right.
think
All
that's
right.
right.
We're in agreement so far.
I know. I mean, it makes sense. If you were there in 2017, which I know a lot of newer fans who joined in 2020 weren't there, but like Rose beating Joanna was amazing, and she did it back to back. And everyone thought, no way Jessica Andrade is going to be able to beat Rose because Joanna handily beat Jessica Andrade. And then Jessica Andrade picks up Rose and dumps her on her fucking head and knocks her out. And it goes, oh my God, what a
Oh
powerful
yeah.
match. And then she fights Zhang Weili, who was pretty kind of unproven at the time. And we're like, we just saw Jessica Andrade power slam Rose into unconsciousness. There's no way. And then Zhang Weili beats her in what, like a minute? Just elbows her into the land of wind and ghosts. And you're like, oh my God. And then she fights Joanna and Jacek again in still the best women's MMA fight that I've ever seen. Just a
Mm.
blood and guts war constantly. And then Rose comes back to fight Zhang Weili, and we go, well, she struggled with Jessica Andrade, but Rose beat Joanna and knocked her out. And then she fucking nukes Zhang Weili in like 10 seconds. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh my God, what the hell? And then Carla Esparza goes fight, and we all go, oh man, Rose is definitely going to beat Carla Esparza. And then in the worst women's MMA fight ever, Carla wins. Like, what a roller coaster. What a fucking that's a storyline. That's something you can sink your teeth into. That's real good MMA, everybody. That's what you want out of a great era, right? It was
That was
5 years
fantastic.
of madness, and I loved it, and I've been chasing that high ever since. Uh, so yeah, I think the Warring States period, as we'll call
I
it,
I
is the
fucking love it. Thank you.
yeah,
That was
that's
great.
right? I mean, do you remember all that? Like, I remember this was also at a time when my now wife was watching MMA more routinely with me. And I don't know if you know this, JJ Aldrich fought at Baltimore. Oh, Rose Namajunas had gone to Baltimore as well. Uh,
What?
for a tournament that we'd been in.
No way. She competed there?
I believe she was a beginner in forms.
Oh my
You can
god.
cut this, yeah, because I also saw her at is it the Golden Gate National or the Golden Gate Invitational?
In the Bay Area?
Yeah, I'd seen her there as well.
Do you know I gotta find this now. That
So
is
she had trained out of Duke Rufus's gym for a while, but she had also
right.
trained in Milwaukee out of a traditional Sanshou gym out of Milwaukee.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
All right. All right. Well, yeah, I gotta look this up right now.
So yeah, her and JJ Aldrich, both kind of from that same area, and then they both went to Duke Rufus, and then I think both went to who's Justin Gaethje's coach? Uh, I keep forgetting his
Oh,
name.
yeah.
You know what I mean.
I,
You know who it is. Kamaru Usman's boxing coach,
sure.
Trevor Whitman. There it is. Anyway, so she knew who she was. We all knew who Joanna Champion was because this was like Joanna Champion and Ronda Rousey dominating at the same time. Women's MMA riding high. Rose, this hot new young thing coming in, knocks out Joanna Champion. Then Jessica Andrade dumps her on her head. Zhang Weili obliterates Jessica Andrade. Rose Namajunas kicks Zhang Weili in the face. It's just what an amazing back and forth. It was a great time overall. Colin. So
Yes.
that only leaves two. Was it the Joanna champion time, the old dynasty, that was the worst for strawweight? Or is it currently with Zhang Weili's new reign?
Ugh. See, I don't know because there's still a lot left to. I mean, Zhao Weili has recently recaptured the title. It was only in the end of what? No, it was actually early 2023, end of 2022.
Hmm.
So I guess it's been a couple years, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah,
Well,
that's hard
I do.
because
I respect you saying like I don't know because we're still in that time, but I do
yeah,
want to flag
sure.
the top five champion or top five contenders are Yan Xiaonan, who she's already beat, Tatiana Suarez, who she like roundly beat, Jessica Andrade, Amanda Lemos, who just had one of the worst fights I've seen on a pay per view card, and then we're getting down to Mackenzie Dern and Amanda Hebos. Not a lot of contenders coming up that I'm going, ooh, wow, look at this one.
That is fair. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it's not. Zhang Wei Li has now transcended two different generations of this division, but she's, I think, now entering a less dynamic version of this division overall.
That that is fair. That is fair. I think currently as it stands, yes, but again, because it's the modern era, there is something that could develop from it.
That's
So
true.
yeah.
But it is the lowest right. It's not like there's going to be a ton of weight changing. I don't know.
Yeah. As it stands right now, I think you're right. Yes.
Yeah. And I think even for telling the next 3 years, barring some amazing person, the Dakota Ditcheva is 125. Like, I haven't seen a contender at 125 that makes me go like, oh shit, we've got somebody. We've got an Ilya Taporia spiking up through the ranks. We've got a Shavkat Rakhmonov coming up through the ranks, you know. So, unfortunately, current UFC fans, both women's bantamweight and women's strawweight, are at their historically weakest moment. But maybe women's flyweight, the youngest of the women's divisions, can save it. Now, Colin, here's the question.
Yes. All right. All right.
How many generations does the flyweight championship have?
uh, really, I guess you could say really it's like one, maybe two, but mostly one. I think it's kind of like what you're just saying right now with like Valentina Shevchenko's reign, of being a champion initially and beating everyone in her generation, and now Valentina Shevchenko like regaining the title and beating the last remains of her generation and the next generation coming in.
Yeah. The one
So I
thing
guess
I
you
will,
could do it in those two again.
yeah, I would say too. I'd say it's like the Valentina era and then the modern era, which at the moment we still have Valentina at the top. But like going through Valentina's title wins and defenses, she beats Ioana Jędrzejczyk. We've already established was the OG for strawweight. Jessica I, old fighter. Liz Carmouche, old fighter. Caitlin Chikagian, old. Like again, I'm saying old fighter, not old for the earth, but for professional fighting, right?
Mm.
Caitlin Chikagian, Jennifer Maya, Jessica Andrade, Lauren Murphy, old fighters. Only then, when she fought Tyler Santos and Alexa Grasso, were they kind of like new up and coming fighters, people who hadn't got into the UFC within 3 years of Valentina entering the UFC. You know, like
Mm.
there was enough time elapsed where like Valentina was an established person and probably champion when they entered the UFC. The one shining light is that currently at flyweight, people who have not fought Valentina Shevchenko and who are younger than her is number two's Menon Furo, number three's Aaron Blanchfield, number four's Macy Barber, number five's Natalia Silva. Rose Namajunas is in this division at number 6, though she is a little bit older, not quite as old as Shevchenko, and she's clearly an older generation. Jessica Andrade is number 7, but then we also have Viviane Araujo, Jasmine Jastovicius, Tracy Cortez, Karine Silva. So we have at least 5 contenders who are in the top 10 who
Mm.
are you know at least 5 years younger than Valentina Shevchenko and who have never fought her before. So I feel like we're right at kind of that turning, that sort of epoch moment between
Right.
the Valentina generation and the new generation. So as it stands, Colin, I guess because we have to just rank these two. are you more excited because we can't say which one's better because this new generation is not fully
It's
happened yet.
unproven. Yeah.
Yeah. Are you more excited for the new generation, or do you have mad nostalgia boner for when Valentina Shevchenko was ruling the division? 'Cause I know you love Valentina.
I
I
do.
know you're a big simp for Valentina.
God. Uh I don't know. Like I'm always hopeful for the future, but at the same time, I'm not very like there's not a lot for me to be like that excited for right now in a lot of these divisions. And that when we went through this exercise, it made me realize like how actually nervous I am
Yeah.
for the sport as a whole.
Oh
You
yeah,
know,
buddy.
like when I reflect back on like how exciting, how dynamic some of these divisions were, but then I see like what's to come, and because you started it with when we were talking about lightweight, and it was just like, oh shit, like what can anyone fill in? Can anyone rise to the occasion? Can anyone fill in the shoes? And I'm drawing blanks on some of these guys. So again, I'm hopeful for it. And everyone always says like, oh, my generation was better and blah 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 all that bullshit, and we're just old fucks now. But I don't know. I really don't see anything, down the pipe. So
Listen, all you young fans, this is the only women's division to be excited about, and I'll tell you why. You're gonna hear a bunch of old, crusty fight fans say how great the Valentina Shevchenko generation was, how amazing it was to watch her win and then do her stupid little dance. Valentina Shevchenko fights were always dull. She knocked out Jessica I, a woman who had no business being in the top 15. Great. I can knock out a kindergartner too. It's all right. The Liz Carmouche fight was one of the worst fights in women's MMA history, and it was her only second title defense. The Caitlin Chukagian fight went 5 rounds and was the most tepid, boring striking affair I've ever seen. Jennifer Maia, simply with a double leg takedown, was able to almost beat Valentina Shevchenko. Jessica Andrade then, after Valentina Shevchenko realized she should learn a double leg takedown, Jessica Andrade was susceptible to the double leg takedown, and it became a 5 round grinding affair. Lauren Murphy, God bless her heart, I think she was like 5 years older than Valentina Shevchenko, nearly 40. You shouldn't be fist fighting professionally at 40. The Valentina Shevchenko era was always boring. It was always shit. Flyweight was always crap. It's only now with this new infusion of exciting, talented fighters who, yes, they have their flaws. Yes, are they as well rounded as Valentina Shevchenko? No, probably not. But there's so much more dynamic, interesting matchups to be made. Valentina Shevchenko has held on to this division with a boring iron grip, and I'm excited to see her go away. Don't let anyone tell you this division was better when Valentina ruled over it. Thank you.
damn, wow, you really are a Valentina hater.
Oh yeah, man. Like she's very talented and very good, but she's talented and good in the way that like Leon Edwards is or Magomed Ankalaev is, which is like I will make this fight so boring because I will outskill my opponent, but never press my advantages to get a finish ever. And I go, great, this isn't interesting, especially when you're so much better than your opponents. Like, bro, Liz Carmouche, Caitlin Chukagian, you're gonna go 5 rounds with these people? Come now. Like, I watched those fights and I was like, at any moment you could execute these women at like with a flick of your wrist, and she chose to go, nah, I prefer to throw one counter hook every minute and a half. And I was like, God damn it, please do something. Yeah. So no, I'm gonna break with Colin here. The old generation is not going to be as good as the new generation, but so far there's only been one generation. We have to shout out to the actual inaugural flyweight champion, Nico Montano, done dirty by the UFC, an indigenous woman who needed time to prepare for a challenge, and the UFC just would not give it to her. So, poor Nico Montano. But I'm excited for this new generation to take over flyweight because I will not have to watch Valentina Shevchenko anymore.
All right, that's fair.
Okay. Now, do you want to start at the lightest men's weight division, or do you want to start at the heaviest?
Let's start the lightest. Let's
Okay.
stick with the lightweights here.
All right. So now, we're not lightweights. We're going all the way to fly, baby.
Yeah.
How many eras in your mind is there at flyweight?
All right. Well, okay. I'm going to give you the number, but I want you to give me your I've been liking your naming conventions for these. They've gotten
Mhm.
me excited to hear. So I have three. You want me to tell who's in them?
No. Just name them.
No, no, no. I want to hear your name. I'm not as creative as you.
Oh, so
I,
you've
I
got three. Okay.
I've got three. I got three generations right now.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I got three as well.
Oh, okay, okay, good.
Yeah. No, mine is the Babylonian God King era.
Okay.
There's obviously the bronzed god Demetrius Johnson,
Yeah,
who
yeah,
Henry Cejudo.
yeah,
We have
yeah.
a little
Small
blip.
king, baby.
Yeah, we have a little blip with Henry Cejudo, but we won't really talk about that.
Yeah, whatever.
Um, uh, then I didn't come up with a fancy name other than just the quadrilogy. Just four title fights in a row between the same two men,
Hmm.
Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo.
Yep.
Um, and during that time, because that was 2020 to 2023, it allowed for a whole nother generation of flyweights to appear,
Yeah,
including
yeah,
someone who was a peer of theirs who just couldn't get the shot. But now it's the era of the cannibal, baby. It's
yep,
the Pantoja era.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what was the best version of flyweight?
Okay, again, I, you and I are both Demetrius Johnson like fanboys, and
Absolutely.
just everything that he did, and just you know, and he was head and shoulders above all of his competition as well. But
Mhm.
unlike some other people who, like you've pointed out, Valentina Shevchenko, he would go for the finishes, like,
Mhm.
and just like when he didn't need to, like going for uh, that like suplex to flying armbar, like why? Well, he didn't need to, but and then it's like you said, he
Mhm.
trained for that specifically,
Mhm.
and just his dynamics, his technique, his like it was just seeing him fight. I don't understand why people aren't like so excited about flyweight because he did what Ronda Rousey did for women's MMA, but for the lighter divisions. Like
Mhm.
every fight of his was exciting. Every fight of his was dynamic. So like I don't understand why Demetrius Johnson doesn't get the flowers that he deserves, And he's and again, I am partial to him. I'm biased to him. I love him. Uh, the Brandon Moreno Davison Figueiredo fight, I think, from a storyline, just going back and forth like that, it reminds me of like those great boxing trilogy fights that you'd hear of how that like just takes over all the storylines for boxing. So, and it literally like you said, a whole new generation comes in like after that. Like that's how long
Mhm.
they were dominating in that just having their back and forth. But I love Pantoja now too. Like I kind of wrote him off when we started this podcast, and I've just been more and more thoroughly impressed with him. And there are some new up and comers that are coming up in the flyweight division that you and I are both very excited for, and I'd like to see if they can challenge Pantoja or how much better Pantoja becomes. So
Mhm.
there is more. The flyweight division is more competitive, I'd say now than it has been in the past, and
Mhm.
that makes it exciting. And there's a lot of new blood coming in. But Demetrius Johnson was just so fucking good, man. And he was just so good. It's so cool to watch. Like, he was one that I would, like, I don't care what else was on the card. If he was on it, I'd watch it.
Okay, so rank for me then in order from best to worst between the Demetrius Johnson era, that quadrilogy era, which was 3 years, and then
Mm,
this modern era.
God. Okay. Remind me, what other fights were happening at flyweight during the quadrilogy era?
Where you had Pantoja beating Askar Askarov, Manel Kopp, Brandon Royval. You had Kai Kara France beating Cody Garbrandt, Brandon
Mm,
Royval. You had Amir Albazi in his
yeah.
ascendancy coming up. Um, you didn't have any of the kind of like dynamic Japanese fighters like Tatsuro Taira or those, but like a lot of the current number one contenders that we have Manal Kopp, we have Brandon Royval, we have Kai Kara France. All of them, Amir Albazi for a time was, all of them were making their name during that 2020 to
Yeah.
2023 run.
Okay. Oh, God. Okay. from a competitive standpoint, that's pretty hard to beat right there. But from a pure entertainment standpoint, I love Demetrius Johnson. I can't ignore that. And I know I'm pretty much putting
Mm,
all of my, you know, thought and weight behind one fighter and
okay.
all of his accomplishments. So again, this goes back to like what is best? Best for the division and the healthiest and the most competitive, or like the most entertaining? Because I would watch any of Demetrius Johnson's fights again. You put any of them on replay, and I'd sit down and watch them again. You
Mhm.
know, I think the quadrilogy era was when we got to see a lot of it. It was like you said, the young. It was the current generation's like proving grounds time. So it allowed them to start to gain some momentum for today, and now
Mhm.
today is like the culmination of that. So
Mhm.
yeah, this is tough, man. But I do like I'm gonna stick with that. I like Demetrius Johnson. Like
Okay.
that was one of my favorite times watching.
And then the quadrilogy is second, and then third for you is the modern one.
I guess so, but mostly because the third we haven't seen. Again, it's still early. There
Mhm.
it's very. It would be very easy for me to say this new generation, not only with the evolution of the fighters from the previous groupings are coming to fruition now, but the new crop that's coming in is also so exciting and dynamic as well.
Mhm.
So it
Yeah.
has a way higher ceiling right now. Like it's not
Mhm.
there yet, but it could easily within the next 16, 20 months easily become the most exciting that the flyweight division has ever been.
Mm.
It could also fall completely flat on its face too,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
and it
Um,
could just completely fold. Like we could be in a year talking like there. Remember when we had a flyweight division? Like that could also happen.
yeah. Um, well, let me tell you my order.
Yeah,
Number
please.
one is the current division.
Oh, okay.
At no time at lightweight have we ever had as many high level skilled opponents that were ready to fight for the championship who haven't fought for the championship.
Okay. That's good.
During the quadrilogy era, the issue was the UFC had previously gutted all of the let go half of the roster at flyweight,
Mhm.
assuming that TJ Dillashaw would beat Henry Cejudo and or Demetrius Johnson, and then they would fold the division. That was very explicitly what they were hoping to do. And so the reason we got that quadrilogy was not only because it was amazing fights between Brandon Moreno and Davis Figueiredo, but because the UFC needed time to even build the division back up because they had so thoroughly sabotaged it themselves. At no point has there ever been as many great, varied, interesting storylines, fighters, styles within the flyweight division as
Mhm.
right now. So that's my number one. My number two is that quadrilogy era because we got to see the
Yeah.
emergence of all of these contenders that are coming to fruition now. Kai Kara France, Brandon Royval. So, I mean, Steve Erceg was even in that kind of era a little bit. Brandon Moreno and Davis Figueiredo put on absolute barn burners for 4 fights in a row. It was fantastic to see. I love Demetrius Johnson. I think he's great, but he ended up kind of being a victim of his own success
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
they couldn't find people for him to fight. And so then they had to throw people at him who were just too green to fight.
Mm.
Um, John Moraga, I think, had only had 3 UFC fights before he fought him. The John Dodson, Joseph Benavidez, no issue with that. Ali Boguchinov, no issue with that. Chris Carriasso, ooh, a Sanchow fighter with a lot of amateur Sanchow fights. We like that. You and I like that, but that guy was not ready. Kyoji Horiguchi, who's turned into a stud now, was
Mhm.
super green. Wasn't ready for it. Henry Cejudo, even at the time, was a little bit green. Tim Elliott was kind of like an old, crusty wrestler, which was interesting. Wilson Hayes could never figure out. And then Ray Borg, I think, was less than 5 years into training. Like
Mm.
Demetrius was so good and it was so cool to see him, but he was a victim of his own success because they almost couldn't keep the division interesting to challenge him because
Right.
they people needed time to marinate and get better overall. And right at the time that he left was when that Brandon Moreno, that Davison Figueiredo, like that Alexander Pantoja, who had beaten both of them prior, like were in the division. So that was the new generation that like would have been interesting for Demetrius to fight, but he unfortunately left. So that's why it's my I look back on it with great fondness and nostalgia, but like looking at it objectively, like what fights can be made, how interesting can these fights be, what sort of crazy storylines will happen. Um, Demetrius ended up being such a steamroller that he just like mowed through people, and then they couldn't even find people to replace. So they were just
Yeah.
like, I don't know, you've had one fight in the UFC, you fight him now, and that's just it felt a little bit like the Amanda Nunes effect, where it's like she just would fight, they just couldn't find bodies for her, so they just kept throwing like people that were just clearly unprepared to fight her.
Yeah. No, that's really fair. That's fair.
Yeah. So our first big break, entirely opposite.
Yeah,
Rankings of flyweight. Our favorite division too.
I know.
I hate to see us fight like this, Colin. It's terrible.
No, but I mean, we are in agreement that like this current generation has potential to like catapult the flyweight division to like extreme like talent and technique and excitement. If only people fucking knew about them. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I still don't understand how Alexander Pantoja is not a bigger star because he is such a fan friendly fighter. He's going out there for
yeah,
he looks the part. His nickname is the fucking Cannibal. Like the dude is a stud.
he doesn't play it safe. He like tries for finishes, like
yeah, he's
in dynamic ways. Yeah,
yeah.
It's
awesome. Yeah, I think it's a great division. Pantoja's a great champion. He's got great challengers, right? We could even get a Brandon Moreno fight. We could get another Kai Car France fight. We've got Tatsuro Taira there. We've got Josh Van coming up. We've got just a lot of great names.
Yeah.
Or he could go up and fight Marab, right? Like I'd fucking watch that. Yeah. Speaking of Marab, this is a tricky one. Men's bantamweight.
Yeah.
Colin, how many generations are there at men's bantamweight?
Oh God, like I don't know. That's the thing, because you kind of have this like we talked about Dominic Cruz a while back, and just he's like this weird anomaly that he was there, but also like wasn't for a while, and he came back and was again relevant, So it's like because let me rephrase that. He started the bantamweight division and was dominant from the start, but then he was in and out because of injuries, like we've highlighted at length, and then he came back. So is that the same generation? Is that kind of like the start of one, but then kind of coming in randomly at the second one? Like I don't really know, because in my mind it's like you've got Dominic Cruz. The big names that are sticking out. You got Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, and I guess you could say Cody Garbrandt for a little bit, but yeah, but basically like Dominic Cruz and TJ Dillashaw are like the big names that are like ruling those divisions for a while.
Well, hold on, Renan Barão
had he was in there. Yeah,
3 title defenses.
Do you have 3?
He beat Uriah Faber for the interim. Then he defended it against Michael McDonald, Eddie Wyland, and Uriah Faber again.
Whoa, what? I don't. Okay, yeah. Let's remember Renan Barão. I did not remember that many.
Yeah, 2012 to 2014, he was the champion.
Oh, because he was interim and defended interim, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So you got Dominic Cruz, Renan Barão, TJ Dillashaw, really, for that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a long ass time, though.
Yeah.
That's almost until 2020. That's from like 2010 almost to 2020.
Well, and that even doesn't account for Dominic Cruz's reign as the champion in
the WEC. Yeah.
Back 2008 or 9. Let me look. He won the title at bantamweight in 2010.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh yeah, so not too far. Like 2010, he had a couple of title defenses, but yeah, I would argue that there are 3 different eras. Of this belt.
Yeah. So I was gonna say it was really like pre-COVID, and then COVID time, and then like now from like Sean O'Malley onward, I'd say.
Interesting. See, I would say it's Dominic Cruz versus Team Alpha Male.
Okay, yeah.
Right? And
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
Hannah Brow is in there, but it's still the same names. It's still Uriah Faber. It's still like Eddie Wineland, Michael McDonald. Like these are not like new names, right?
Yeah.
TJ
Okay.
Dillashaw is a Team Alpha Male, and then like he wins, and then Dom Cruz comes back, beats. We talked about this, TJ Dillashaw, and then Uriah Faber again. Like it is Dom Cruz bullies Alpha Male. Then he does lose to Cody Garbrandt, and then we have that series of what, a year and a half or 2 years, almost 3 years of Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw rematches
Mhm.
going back and forth. Henry Cejudo then wins, which is like this weird blip during COVID. And now we have what seems to me to be the era of the Ray Longo versus Slavs gym. It's Aljamain Sterling and Marab against Piotr Jan against Sean O'Malley's not a Slav, but like it's this weird like it's now like the Ray Longo gym era. Or I
Okay.
guess we just call it like modern era. Because I don't feel like we're moving into like the next generation because Marab is probably gonna fight Sean O'Malley again. It'll be Piotr Jan again, it'll be Corey Sandhagen again. I don't see like a ton of like brand new 135ers moving up. So I think we're still pretty like firmly in the middle of this modern era, which is
Mhm.
Piotr Jan, Aljamain Sterling, Corey Sandhagen, Sean O'Malley, Merab Dvalishvili, Umar Nurmagomedov overall. Does that seem fair? Like three
Yeah.
generations? Cool.
Wait,
Um,
you said 2 generations.
no, three. It's the Dominic Cruz versus Team Alpha Male, the
Yeah.
Team Alpha Male versus Team Alpha Male, and then
Oh, okay.
right that like weird middle ground where Dom Cruz is no longer a factor, Uriah Faber is no longer a factor.
Yeah.
Um, it's like
Like
Cody Garbrandt, T.J. Dillashaw, Marlon Moraes, Henry Cejudo, like this weird amalgamation.
yeah.
Overall.
Okay. That makes sense.
What was the best era, Colin?
Jesus. I don't know. Like again, bantamweight was one of those divisions where we're getting into these divisions where it pretty much any time there's someone in this weight class, I would watch it. Mostly just because like either A, there are so many fighters that were exciting to watch,
Mm-hmm.
or even just like, oh, could this be the next person that comes in to like spice up the division more to add even more dynamics to it?
Mm-hmm.
I will say I don't think it's the modern one.
Okay.
Uh, I think again, because this is kind of just a blanket statement now, because the modern division, the modern era has a lot of newer people coming in, so there is potential for it. But
Mm-hmm.
as it stands right now, I don't believe so.
Interesting. Okay.
Uh, I'm trying to think again, and part of this is kind of like with Flyweight, it was like my nostalgia, and also kind of when we talked about this at the height of like what we were watching and when we were watching, there are so
Mm-hmm.
many like nostalgic feelings associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
So that Dom Cruz versus Team Alpha Male is like just sticks out in my mind. I think you and I
Yeah.
watch almost every one of those cards together,
Yeah. Absolutely. And
So
it was like a big thing.
and the storylines that are associated with it, like yeah.
Yeah. And this was back when like the UFC was only doing like 30 cards a year rather than
Mhm.
48 or 45 that they do now. It's like there was more time in between. Things felt a little bit more like, ooh, look at this. It's you only get a fight card once every 2 weeks, once every 3 weeks. Yeah. Well, I'll just say this.
Tell me, yeah.
I think for storylines, that Dom Cruz versus Alpha Male era, even with Henan Barao in the middle, because this was also at the time when like Henan Barao was like training at Novo Uniao with Jose Aldo,
Mhm.
and Dana White was like touting him endlessly as the pound for pound champion. And for a while, he looked like that. He was like he smoked Uriah Faber twice. He beat Eddie Wineland with a jump spinning back kick. He knocked out Michael McDonald. It was amazing. We're like, who's gonna beat this guy? And then DJ Dillashaw styled on him, and then we're like, oh my god, that's Dom Cruz 2.0. And then Dom Cruz comes back and shows, nope, there's only one Dom Cruz, motherfuckers, and wins. Like that might be the most entertaining era. Though I have to say, Never before have we had like the skill of Piotr Jan. We also have Jose Aldo actively fighting in this division
That's
currently.
true. Yeah,
We
that's
also have
true.
Henry Cejudo actively fighting in this division. We have Sean O'Malley, which as much as we might not like his antics, the dude can fight and can sling punches. We have Merab Dvalishvili, truly a mutant. We've never seen someone with a gas tank like that shit. Umar Nurmagomedov, who might be truly the most skilled bantamweight I've ever seen fight when it comes to like full rounded skill set. Song Yadong, who like is entertaining. Rob Font, who's entertaining. We've got Peyton Talbot coming up. We've like it. It feels like a pretty good division right now.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's mostly the UFC not having storylines and being pretty bad at promoting recently because they promoted the shit out of Dom Cruz and that alpha male feud, right? That like they really put a lot of promotional weight behind like getting people invested in it, whereas now they just don't. But when it comes to like the interesting matchups you can make, I don't know. I don't know if bantamweight's ever been better. It might have been in that first generation where like Dom Cruz and Uriah Faber and Hannah Brow and Eddie Wineland and Michael McDonald, Demetrius Johnson fought there at a time. Like that's I don't know. I would put those two as tied. And then that weird middle ground where it was like Cody Garbrandt, TJ Dillashaw, and then TJ Dillashaw pops for EPO, and then it's Marlon Moraes versus Henry Cejudo. That was a shitty 4 years. Like we can
Mm-hmm.
just forget about that. So we'll say that's the worst.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I would tie the OG bantamweight division with this modern one.
Okay.
As the
I think that's fair. Yeah. I
yeah
think that's
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
All right,
Let's do one
cool.
more. Let's do
One
featherweight.
more featherweight, baby. This one's this one's pretty easy. There's not many eras to this sucker.
Yeah.
Colin, how
I mean,
many eras do you name here?
I say 3.
3. What are they?
Jose Aldo,
Mm-hmm.
Max and Volk,
Mm-hmm.
and the current one,
Yep.
which
You're
might
right.
just be Ilya and Volk. Like,
Yeah, which like Ilya is gonna leave, so like it's another. It's here's the weird thing. In the middle of that Jose era, because I'm assuming you're counting that Jose era until he loses to Max Holloway. Is that
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Now there is this very significant blimp there. Where something did happen,
Yeah,
and a
yeah,
fighter
yeah.
did pass through it, which actually brought more attention than had ever been brought before. And that's Conor McGregor on his like I mean, I can't I know you were never a big Conor lover when it was happening, but like
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't overstate how fucking electrifying and sensational it was to be a Conor fan on that initial run up to his fight
Yeah.
against Jose Aldo.
Yeah. No, you know, I admit it was the greatest like sports superstar at the time, you know,
Yeah.
and it was insufferable, but you could not deny just the incredible draw that he had.
Yeah. And like it was I mean it's between what 2013 up to 2015. So it's only a 2-year period really. And it's actually shorter than that because of his knee injury. It's really only 2014 to 2015. It's really about uh, 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 18 months in total. I mean, I remember watching him in 2013 fight Max Holloway and watching that fight and like going like, oh, both of these guys are going to be champions one day. Like they
Mhm.
were both in their early 20s. He blew out his knee, but then he comes back. The Diego Brandao knockout, Dustin Poirier knockout, Dennis Seaver knockout, Chad Mendes knockout, and then Jose Aldo knockout. I mean, that's a run, dude. It was their MMA has not since produced kind of like a run like that with a fighter and the promotion behind a fighter.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
diminishing.
Just a meteoric rise
Yeah.
to stardom.
Yeah, but it's not known as the Conor era because he did not define that division. There was
Mhm.
one man who defined that division, and that's the King of Rio, baby. That's Jose Aldo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Recount for me what it was like watching the Jose Aldo era, Colin.
Oh man, I mean, we talked about it like before
Mm-hmm.
of just how because you know he came in from the WEC and when he fought, it was just a promise of insane violence. And it was kind of
Mm-hmm.
like what we've talked about with Pantoja, of how he goes to knock people out, and he goes to he didn't hold back, and he was trying to I think you said in our podcast punt people's legs into the stands. The man was the definition of just like
Violence.
excessive violence in the
Yeah.
cage. And again, this was at the lighter weight classes where people kind of wrote them off. When the UFC brought in the lighter weight classes, they're like, oh, these guys can't knock people out, and therefore it's not entertaining, which is a whole different kind of discussion. But
Mhm.
Jose Aldo had technique, he had speed, and he had devastating violent tendencies. And
Mhm.
it made again kind of started this whole lighter divisions and really made them so exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, and he I mean, even before coming to the UFC, so treating this as outside the UFC, when was the best time for this division? It has to be. I mean, it kind of, well, maybe it doesn't have to be, but it's hard to rule out this Jose Aldo one because even before he came to the UFC in 2009, he's flying kneeing knockout Cub Swanson. He's
Yep.
absolutely demolishing Mike Brown. He's turning Uriah Faber's legs into hamburger meat. He's knocking out Manny Gambirian in a minute and a half. And then when he comes to the UFC, he has one of the best striking fights that stood the test of time for at least 10 years against Mark Hominick.
Yeah.
A
Yeah.
truly fantastic one. Then Kenny Florian, somebody who was a title challenger at 155, is going to come down and weight, and we go, oh no, Jose Aldo's not going to be able to weight bully anyone because Kenny Florian's going to come down. And he kicked Kenny Florian in the leg in the very first round, and Kenny Florian spun like a fucking top. And then he immediately dominated that fight. Then it was, oh, Chad Mendez, he's the actual alpha male, the best at alpha male. It's not Uriah Faber, it's
Okay.
Chad Mendez. Knocks him out instantly. Beats
And
Frankie Edgar, a
but
former
then
155.
that Chad Mendes fight was also in Brazil too, and when
Yeah.
he ran into the crowd and just created an insane pandemonium almost. It was, oh god,
Yeah.
a real superstar for this division.
Yeah. And then it smokes Frankie Edgar, who had beaten BJ Penn, one of the all-time best pound for pound, and who had been a 155 champion, right? Now, he did then have two stinkers against Chan Sung Jung and Ricardo Lamas overall. And then we thought, well, he'll fight Chad Mendez again, but he's been having some stinkers. This Chad Mendez might be able to take this. And then it was the most blood and guts, brutal fight I've seen. It was so awesome. The Chad Mendez Jose Aldo 2 fight, go back and watch it if you haven't seen it.
Mm.
It is nonstop action from wall to wall. And then we get this larger than life force with Conor McGregor, who knocks him out in 13 seconds. And we think, oh my God, what is going to happen? And then he fights Frankie Edgar for the interim title because Conor is talking about moving up to 155 or whatever. And he smokes Frankie Edgar. We're wondering, how is Jose Aldo going to come back from being stretched in 13 seconds? And he just takes it to Frankie Edgar. It was, and I mean, he's gone on past his era to have sensational fights since then.
Mm-hmm.
But the Jose Aldo era, always interesting contenders, routinely very good fights. We had this trifecta for a period of time in 2015 of Chad Mendez, Conor McGregor, Jose Aldo, and Frankie Edgar all fighting against each other routinely. And that's the top four of that division fighting each other, and that's amazing.
Mm.
But then, Colin, we get someone even better, someone even more beloved, Max Blessed Holloway, dude. And his era wasn't long, but I guess he kind of shares it with Volkanovski.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, Max had 8 straight wins in order to get his interim title shot against Anthony Pettis. And then he knocks out Jose Aldo not once, but twice. Then an amazing fight against Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar. Volkanovski beats him. Then Volkanovski has to fight Max 2 or more times. Volkanovski also then gets to fight Brian Ortega and Chan Sung Jung. It's it. I mean, that's what I think most pre-COVID people watched was this and even during COVID, Volkanovski and Max, each one of them individually knocking off contender after contender after contender after contender, and truly proving that they are both head and shoulders above the rest of the division, and nobody, not the new generation with Yair Rodriguez, not Calvin Kattar, Like none of these guys can touch them
Yeah.
until we get to the new generation, which is Ilya starching our two favorites, Max and Volk, just murdering them both in their sleep.
it it really
Yeah.
is. It's not like a new generation. It's like one man coming in.
Well, I will say we do have like looking at like the contenders in that division for ones that have not fought Max or Volk and are like significantly younger. We do have Taporia, right? We have Diego Lopez, who's kind of
Yeah.
new. Mosar Evloev, right? Yair Rodriguez and Brian Ortega are pretty old, but we've got Arnold Allen. Aljamain Sterling is from an older generation, but he is new to this division, I will say overall. We've got Yusuf Salal. We know we've got Blue Jean Silva. He's not in the rankings, but he's about to kill Bryce Mitchell. So like we do have some newish people coming
Yeah.
up. through this
Okay.
division.
Yeah.
So with all that said, Colin, which one was the best era featherweight?
God, all of them. Featherweight is the division
know.
of kings, man.
It's-
All the, it's all it's all good.
That's it's one of these like horrible things where unlike these other divisions, we're like, what a terrible slog, or what like this great
Yeah.
time. It's such a wonderful handoff of like, oh my god, the Jose Aldo era. I look back with such like reverence and excitement and like, oh, what a great time to watch fighting. But then going, oh, but wait, but what? The sequel to that one, it's like Terminator 2. It's even better. It's fucking Max and Volk.
Yeah.
Right? Like this is so fucking awesome. And then this new one, I've been way higher on Ilya Taporia than you have. And
Yeah.
I am sad he's leaving 155, but I'm like, holy fucking shit. Like this could be the trilogy. Like this could be like the Return of the King for Lord of the Rings. This could be the best
Yeah.
one of all of them. Oh my god. It is the best division.
Yeah.
If you're a fight fan watching, go back and watch all the fights. Don't worry about if you're being gypped overall, right? Like bantamweight sucks now. Flyweight sucks now for the women's division. And like but featherweight's always good and always will be good and will never let you down. So continue to watch it.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I really think there's only two divisions that kind of have this longevity of you pick any time and there's like exciting fights and exciting fighters and exciting storylines.
Ooh, what's the other one?
Well, we're not going to talk about it today, but I will make the argument that it's lightweight.
Now, interesting. What about welterweight?
Yeah. The modern era of it is a little.
Hold on. We had Matt Hughes smoking everybody, fighting Sean Shirk, Frank Trigg, Carlos Newton, BJ Penn. Then it was George St. Pierre coming in, smoking everybody. All those great fighters. John Fitch, Thiago Alves, Dan Hardy, Josh.
Oh, yeah, no. I'm saying I'm not denying that welterweight
you're saying
had
the very modern Bilal Muhammad.
the very modern. Yeah. Leon Edwards,
but
Bilal
hold
Muhammad.
on.
Yeah.
We do have Jack de la Maddalena. We do have
Shavkat.
smoking, drinking Carlos Prates. We do have Shavkat.
Oh, he is a welterweight. That's right.
Yeah, like
Yeah,
it's
okay.
still good
Okay.
eating. It's still good eating.
All right.
It's not fucking light heavyweight or fucking middleweight or fucking heavyweight. Like as we move away from the pinnacle of featherweight, we will begin to realize that we've drifted further away from the glory of God, and more and more traveling in the darkness. Like that's what I think we'll find. But join us next time. We will maybe talk about this. We will have to preview the UFC on London card, which is actually pretty good, and it actually has Gunnar Nelson in it, which that's stupid, and maybe I'm like a dumb hipster, but I'm like, that's cool. I like having a Gunnar Nelson fight. But this was our non-exhaustive history of the best and worst times for the lighter weight divisions. We will start with lightweight next time and make it to heavyweight. I'm one fight fan, Stuart.
I'm the other Colin.
Watch featherweight. It's the best division ever. And don't watch bantamweight ever again. Just cut it. Cut the women's bantamweight. All right, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.